What's up, YouTube? Preston here, and back to our regularly scheduled program. I needed. There's some things I just needed to get off my chest with the last couple of videos, both the rant and then the music one, which is I didn't say anything, but it was also just expressing myself. But anyways, back in business, and so let's get started, shall we? Today, the thing I wanted to talk about was kind of piggybacking off of the idea that I had going from Borderlands in my personal rant, kind of just focusing more on that specifically. And I wanted to talk about what I think is the reason why the developers and CEO Randy Pitchford, whatever, made the decisions that they did. And the first thing that comes to mind is I'm kind of wondering if the voice actors and actresses of Borderlands 3 wanted more money than what Gearbox was willing to pay them. This does happen. If you ever watch the abomination that is Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
What the hell is that?
That movie deserves its own video. But yes, that right there is an example of voice actors and actresses, you know, because they just got off of a fantastic movie or video or video game, and they, now that we've got some fame on our hands, we deserve to be paid more, right? So it's like, okay, now we're gonna push it. We're gonna push our luck, and not that I blame them. I mean, they deserve a raise, but also, you know, like other companies want to hire them for ads and commercials, and then there's other like indie films and Hollywood films that want their attention. So yeah, they can flex their muscles a little bit. They can say, hey, I want some more cash. All right, I deserve this. If you want me, pay me. But they didn't want to pay them. So I think that we can't blame the writers for making some of the decisions that they did in this context. I still don't like the decisions that they made, but I'm kind of wondering if it's because of money, but not in that they're being greedy. Not saying that isn't true, but that they just only have a certain budget, and so they are going to basically create these other characters, not just because it's, you know, a new game or a new movie or whatever, but they need to make these characters to replace the old ones because the old ones don't want to do it for less. Does that make sense? Like, if you have a business and you want to progress and you want to make more money to please your investors and shareholders and all that, but then your actors and actresses, which is probably, and I am no expert here, so please forgive me. If you know anything, post it in the comments down below. But if your employees, your actors and actresses, which you're paying the most money towards, say, I want more, well, yeah, some corners are going to be cut, especially since Borderlands 3 came out, what was it? So it's 2019. Borderlands 2 came out in 2012. Pre-sequel was developed by 2K Australia, so that wasn't much off of Gearbox's back, I don't imagine. But, yeah, it's like, okay, it's been this long. Okay, we need to do something. All right, company needs to make business. So that's one thing. And the other thing, and finally it dawned on my brain. So as the dollar inflates, or as currencies around the world inflate, price points are going to go up to keep the overhead, right? problem is, and this is actually, what I'm about to say is actually a commentary on microtransactions and on more and more expensive, like DLC for less money, or for more content, or less content for more money. Something that dawned on me this week is the price point for a AAA game, so like a top tier video game, equivalent to a Hollywood movie, right? It's still only $60 to $70. It's stayed that way because the fans, the consumer, that's the expectation. That video games of a AAA quality will always be $60, $70. But you see, the problem is that, at least here in the States, right, there's a demand for a higher starting wage, which is fair because of the inflation of the dollar and because everything else is going up. Minimum wage is still abysmal. At least the federally mandated amount is. So there's a demand to increase that, which is fair. I think that's fair. But that said, again, the price point for video games of a AAA quality is still $60. And it's been that way for at least over a decade, at least since I've been paying attention. It's probably been that way for a long, long time. That price point has not moved up. So you can imagine that once indie developers get the big bucks from, someone that either buys them out or funds them, like, Blizzard or Sony or whatever. It's like, okay, listen, you've been making games as a passion and you're getting paid for it, and that's great. You've had a couple of successes, but here's the deal. Here's the price point of a AAA product that has stuck this way for over a decade. Again, according to my knowledge, over a decade, it's only been $60. And if my references are correct, it's been that way since the 90s. That's a long time for a video game to stay at that value. So they're like, okay, we're not making enough money to support our projects or whatever. And this is me just playing devil's advocate. I'm just trying to figure out why, like, what goes behind the thought process. And this is just a realization that I had, so I'm just spitting it out there. You can do with it what you will. But I think the reason why, not only are there obviously some very criminal-esque things that have happened with microtransactions and gotcha mechanics and that kind of thing, as EA has graciously showed us. But behind the corruption, there is what seems to me to be a reasonable excuse for this. And it's because that price point is not keeping up with the times. In other words, like, they, again, assuming and theoretically, are having a harder time, paying for their production, paying for their staff and whatnot. And so I'm thinking that initially, when like the microtransaction thing first came out, it was a way to combat this static price point that will never move because it'll make everyone mad, right? And they want to have at least be making some money. So there's like a delicate balance between consumer expectation and trying to keep up with the times. So what I think happened is they thought of these tiny little like cosmetic things or whatever, or in the case of World of Warcraft, the subscription platform, and they're like, okay, let's add this little thing, or then expansion packs, and then eventually DLCs. All right. So effectively, they are increasing the value of their product without directly increasing the value of their product. Does that make sense? So, like, you're paying more and more, ultimately, for the same content. I mean, how many releases have we had of Skyrim? You know what I mean? And, like, for, like, Borderlands 2, my favorite Borderlands game in that franchise, I've probably spent over $100, even though I paid the $60 price point once for the Xbox version. And then I paid the $60 price point for the, like, collector's edition, the one with all the DLC content. So even though I spent, well, actually I take that back. No, I bought the Borderlands 2 game, and then I bought each of the DLCs in turn. And that was on the Xbox. And then for PC, I bought it for a $60 price point for the Game of the Year edition, which already had everything. Plus, I spent a little bit of money on cosmetics because that those Necromancer robes for Gage just looked amazing. So I couldn't help myself. All right, I did purchase. I bit the bullet. But you know, from me, Gearbox has probably made $150, $200 off of one product, including DLC and all that stuff. Off of one product, Gearbox has probably made $200. Bethesda's probably made just about as much with. Actually, they've probably made $300 or $400 because I've kept buying the re-releases. And then I bought the anniversary edition, the collective one, right? I didn't buy each individual one because those price points are ridiculous. But the fact that they kind of snubbed all their fans that bought into that cash shop, it does bring me a bit of a malevolent joy. Saying, I got it for $20, and all the rest of you jokers probably paid hundreds or something. I don't know. And I feel sorry for you, and I pity you, and I'm sorry. Granted, I just bit into it too, so. What I'm saying is that the microtransaction DLC, the extra content that's not part of the main product, that stuff is going to keep coming out. Kind of, on the one hand, there is certainly some greed involved, especially with how certain companies have handled things. But at the end of the day, indie developers are going to be facing the same thing eventually. I don't know how Relogic does it, because they only have the same price for their game, and they're constantly updating it, which is amazing. I love you, Relogic. Thank you so much. But I'm sure they get their money through other means, so that way they can keep that price point low. And like Minecraft, I think it's the same way. You know, it's only been $30 since it came out, and it constantly gets updated. But they have other stuff. There's other external content that they make their money off of, and then there's like Minecon and all the other stuff. There is alternate ways to make to shore up what your main product is not making. So there's ways to do it. The ways to do it that I think is healthy and perfectly acceptable. But it's because they have to. I mean, it was a need at first, but then they saw how lucrative just the nickel and diming concept was, which skyrocketed their profits, right? And so then, so in the early 2010s and the late 2000s, that's when things began to change. That's why story writers are gimped on what they can really do and produce and say, because they have to be forward thinking and thinking of this other content that's going to be created. They can't put it all in the vanilla game. So going back to 2019, I think that's why things happened the way they did for Borderlands 3. Because of this mentality and this psychology. The psychology that plays into what the consumer expects a product to be. And since it's basically hard as stone tradition now, that a AAA game is going to be $60 or $70 if you count the latest Zelda release, which I think that's Nintendo's kind of like experimenting. It's like, all right, let's push it up $10. I mean, it's a sequel to an already famous product. we're pretty consistent with our stuff, so I think we can push it $10. So I think this is Nintendo kind of like saying, all right, you know what, maybe we can break that glass ceiling, you know, of consumer expectation that a product that a AAA video game is going to be $60, and like, all right, let's push it to 70, you know. I think Nintendo's being a little risky, but I think they can get away with it though. I don't think anyone has a problem with it, honestly. But outside of that, you know, most other companies, they're trying these other ways. So as much as I'm not especially I really don't like the freemium model and pay to win scams and all that stuff. But behind the perception of greed, there is a reason for it, a logical, practical reason for it. And like I said in my self-rant video, these people are not devils or demons. They're humans just like you and me. And, you know, they got bills to pay and mouths to feed. Ain't nothing in this world for free. So they got to find ways to keep up with the times at the least. And right now, this is the state of gaming. This is the state of interactive content. It kind of has to be that way. Kind of, you know, with many asterisks. But I can kind of, after I've done some thinking about it, that I can kind of understand why AAA developers are making the choices that they are. So, anyways, so looking forward to my personal content. There's an idea that I have for Borderlands. Thinking about making like a Borderlands history or something. And like basically bringing things up to speed just before the Commander Lilith, or up to the Commander Lilith DLC, and just before Borderlands 3. Because I want to expose like the different plot points they were going with, and how Borderlands 3 didn't really follow up with that. So that's like one video that I have in mind. And then the other one is going to be an alternative Borderlands 3. I'm still very interested in that. The thing is these projects are going to take time, because I want to make a quality product that isn't just something that I put out in a week. You know, like really content like this, I really could put out in a day if I really wanted to. I give myself a week so I can take care of other things, but I could theoretically put it out in a day. But I want to stay consistently to publishing something once a week while I work on these bigger projects. So something to look forward to. It's been on my mind for a few weeks now, so it actually may stick and I may actually do it. But I guess we'll see what happens. Anyways, that is going to be all from me today. I've been your host, Preston, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye!
Wasn't that fun? Let's try something else.